Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for holding today's hearing, and thank you for all of the witnesses who have agreed to testify today. When I return to my district, Pennsylvania's 13th Congressional District, I hear about the pervasive and unrelenting illegal robocalls and texts that my constituents are faced with, often on a daily basis. So many of my constituents are senior citizens. I sat down and did a senior citizen seminar twice in the district in the last month. And you hear recurrent themes. You hear the grandma, it's Mike, I'm in Mexico and I'm in jail. I need your help. I need it. It sounded just like Mike. I hear that repeatedly when I have these roundtable discussions with seniors. And it seems like the scammers are getting creative and finding actually new ways to trick us with incredible looking text messages and very convincing grandma and grandpa calls. Scammers have even learned how to incorporate AI into intimidating loved ones to convince them to turn over personal information, credit card numbers, bank numbers. Too many of my constituents are risking their retirement savings, and subsequently they lose faith in the system that we have set in place to protect them. We need to do better. We need to both educate consumers and anticipate the next angle of attack that these scammers will take, particularly with the assistance of our partners in law enforcement and the DOJ. Mr. Burkue, your testimony mentioned a project piloted by the industry traceback group ITG in partnership with banks and carriers, aimed at tackling fraud and consumer financial losses. Can you elaborate on the pilot goals and successes thus far, and is there collaboration with law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the most promising work our industry is doing is partnering across sectors, because the fraudsters are hurting our collective customers, whether that's banks or the carriers and your constituents. So what we've been doing is working with banks to help them identify where their number has been spoofed in a few carriers. So working with the carriers, getting examples of calls that the carriers see from the bank's number, getting that back to the bank, and the bank can tell us, oh, those weren't us. And what we're doing with that is two things. We're able to trace that back, find out who made the calls, find out who was spoofing the number, get that information in the hands of law enforcement to take action with it, but also help the bank identify and look at those customers and say, oh, did any of these customers that got the fake call pretending to be us have a suspicious transaction, and helping to find that. And I think criminal enforcement has to be a key here, because we know the scammers will use any tool available to them, and they won't stop just because it gets a little harder. They keep evolving, and so the key is going after them, and we stand ready to continue to support that.
And I agree. The scammers certainly have the ability to be incredibly crafty, devious, and downright evil in this regard. Talk to me about how you interface with financial institutions to make them aware of these situations.
So I think that's actually one of the promising things going on across the industry, is that we work directly with a lot of the financial institutions. We work with tech companies, others. Marriott was mentioned before. We worked very closely with Marriott to trace the calls pertaining to be Marriott. So that's what we're doing, but there's broader conversations now about how the industries can even keep growing and continue to integrate. In my opening testimony, one thing I mentioned I think Congress can do to help here is a safe harbor for that fraud information sharing, because I think there are questions about rules and risks when you do share information. So I think that's one way we can continue to unlock those good partnerships.
And thank you. Thank you for being proactive in this. Mr. Waguespack, many of my constituents are in rural central Pennsylvania, where internet connectivity is difficult and educational digital resources on illegal robocalls are inaccessible. How can federal agencies and industry partner, coordinate efforts to better educate consumers, specifically in rural areas with limited internet access and those digital resources?
Well, I think on leaning into what has been done since TCPA was first initiated, where you have private sector solutions going in and working with, we've talked a lot about FCC and FTC, but also the local law enforcement and local financial institutions on the ground there, putting that initiative out there. Mr. Burkue talked about some of the information sharing that are done with the banks to prevent the fraud. There's also a second level down. It's a good example of the education program. Through the Bankers Association, they've armed about 2,000 banks out there to talk to their consumers. Here's a hit list of the things we will never ask you for. So if you get an email that has this, or this, ignore it, it's spam, here's how you call us back. And so we can use the private sector, I think, to develop some of that messaging and make sure consumers can be informed of the decisions they need to be able to fight back on their own.
I thank all of the witnesses for presenting here today. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired, and I yield back.